Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it. Hey guys, I just wanted to take this opportunity to make you aware of a brand new tool that we've just created called the Exit Readiness Assessment. Now, it is for founders and CEOs that are looking to exit from their business operations. Now, it doesn't matter even if you're not looking to exit right now, I would highly recommend to go and take the assessment straight away. It helps you to identify areas in your business that you need to work on to help you towards that exit strategy. And at the end of it, you get a personalized report on some of the areas that you're doing particularly well in and some of the areas that you need to make some improvements to. Make sure you head over to readytoexit.scoreapp.com. That's readytoexit.scoreapp.com. Enjoy. You know what the most expensive thing in your business right now? It's not your salary bill. It's not your office. It's not even the software subscription that you forgot that you are paying for on a regular basis. It's the hundreds of tiny decisions you make every single day that nobody ever talks about. The ones that feel like nothing, the ones that feel productive, but quietly, invisibly, they are draining thousands from your business every single year. And you don't even know it's happening. Now, my guest today has built his entire life's work around helping founders see this tax and stop paying it and get their time and their business back on track. Now, today's guest is a very good friend of mine from Ireland, and his name is called Barry Cryan. Barry is the founder of Do More Better. He coaches 6 to 7 figure entrepreneurs, and he's worked with over 6,000 business owners. And he has one simple promise, which is work less, grow more, which I absolutely love, by the way. He's been where a lot of you guys are listening in right now, and that's why I think it's definitely worth listening to today's episode. So without further ado, Barry, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Adam. Great to be here.
Likewise. Really fascinating topic today, because I think one of the reasons why I got you here is purely because of that invisible tax thing, which we will talk about very shortly. Your story isn't typical. Take me back where all this started. What was actually going on in your life? Because you're not from coaching or business. Is it safety officer? Is that correct?
Yeah. So my background was basically as a safety engineer, mainly in the pharmaceutical industry. So that's where I worked. That's where I trained. That was my background. And I was mainly covering pharmaceutical industry here in the northwest of Ireland, west of Ireland. And that's where I started my own journey, which is a million miles away from what I do now. And what happened to me, essentially, is I ran into just unexplained health issues. Started getting flu-like symptoms that evolved into really bad brain fog, chronic fatigue, loss, really very little nor short-term memory. Like me and you could be having a conversation. I wouldn't even remember what we had started talking about a minute ago. Like, this is the kind of stuff that was going on. All unexplained stuff, in that I couldn't find any answers from doctors, consultants, anything like that. And this is going on and on. Actually, it was about 2.5 years before I even found like what was actually going on with me. So I had a couple options. So one of them was to keep knocking on doors and see could I find any, reasons why this was happening. See could I get to the bottom of it. Yeah. The other thing was I wasn't performing at all now. Like I was really struggling. Like I used to have to go into the bathroom at work, lock the door for 20 minutes to try and rest my eyes, try and recharge the body to go again for another 90 minutes. This is the kind of stuff that was going on to try and get me through a day. I'll be in bed at 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, really bad fatigue. So, but like even when it came to work, like like I couldn't remember things. I had to keep writing stuff down. I couldn't remember stuff. People asked me to do something.
Really?
Like it. So anyways, I started. I knew I had to find a better way myself. Okay, while I was waiting for these health answers, so I just started going down the rabbit hole of seeing, well, how could I get more out of myself? The likes of Branson and others out there, like how does he have many multi-billion dollar businesses,
Mm.
and like he must have some tools or processes or systems that I don't. And I started going down the rabbit hole with YouTube
Yep.
and like seminars, books. Remember I got a Kindle around that time. I went mad on reading, like literally taking any info. And the more information I got, the more I wanted. I was consuming huge amounts of information. What I started to see is commonalities between these high performers and these businesses and business owners. I just started taking some of that stuff myself, battle testing it, putting the rubber to the road. Some stuff worked, some stuff didn't. But over time, I developed a kind of a framework for myself where I was operating at a completely different level. Even like I was probably getting about 1 day's work done in 5. When I kind of dialed in how I was doing things, I was getting 3 or 4 times more out of myself like than I ever did before, even while I was healthy. And I really didn't think much of that, or I was, I suppose, like a lot of us, we think about ourselves and what we're doing day to day. Never really even thought about others in terms of what they were doing.
Yeah.
Until eventually I found out through a series of coincidences. Anyways, I ended up in the Czech Republic getting treated for this autoimmune condition. So basically, turned out to be Lyme disease. Didn't really know, and testing very inaccurate in Ireland. I know there's the challenges in the UK and a lot of countries with when it comes to Lyme disease. But Czech Republic, Germany, the US are the 3 countries that have evolved testing regimes for it. And thankfully, I was able to get tested there. I was able to get in for some treatment. So basically, I spent a month over there in this town called Lukovic in the Czech Republic, this small little spa town. And it gave me a lot of time to think about my life when I was over there. And I just started thinking about, well, what I was doing and my journey and other people that I worked with. And I started thinking about just what I had developed. And I realized, well, look, I have something here, like anything else, a skill and a system. Most people never learn that. They learn, they get trained, they go to college, they learn on the job, they read all the SOPs, but they don't really get tools that enable them to get the most out of themselves. So I'm like, okay, all that other stuff, that's good. But if you can actually get the most out of yourself, you're never going to put all the other stuff to use. And I was at that point, I started formalizing this a little bit more, helping a few people when I came back, seeing them get results. And that evolved over a period of 10 years into doing essentially what I do now, working with some of the busiest people on the planet, entrepreneurs and business owners.
Love it. It's really interesting how the whole kind of, Lyme disease is a horrible thing. It's a bit like, it's constantly draining you as, and zapping your energy. And you kind of think to yourself, what the hell's going on here? Like, I mean, you seem pretty young and pretty healthy and, that must have been a real cause for concern, but I'm glad you got it sorted anyway. So.
Yeah, it definitely was cause because I seen people with very similar symptoms and unexplained stuff, and they like ended up in very bad situations because they didn't get it treated and didn't get it treated in time.
Yeah.
So definitely, it was a big worry.
Yep.
A big worry at that time.
Yep, very good. Well, that's good context. So let's talk about this topic of invisible tax, which is what we spoke about offline, and you talked about. So there's a few things that I picked up from our conversation. Number one, you talked about micro decisions and how every single one of them costs us something in one way, shape, or form. Now, our listeners, including, well, me not so much, but used to be, our listeners are drowning in to-do lists, things to do, very transactional, and they still feel like they're not getting anywhere, right? I used to feel like that a lot. What are they actually paying for without them realizing it?
So you kind of touched on it at the start. There's an invisible tax that most people right now on the planet are paying. And actually, we're paying a lot more than we were 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's all those micro decisions right now. Okay, and when I talk about micro decisions,
Yeah.
micro decision is like everything you're doing. So it's the email to the call to the big thing, the small thing, then everything between, the notifications, like everything. You have to make a decision about what to do, when to do, how to do it, or will I answer the call, or will I go to the email? Now there's someone looking for something over here. All these things are micro decisions that stack up, that lead to cognitive overload, that lead to decision fatigue, that lead to a whole pile of inefficiency. Okay, so I'll give you an example. Every time we switch task, okay, costs us 11 to 24 minutes. Every time we're in the middle of something, we get interrupted or a notification pops in, we get our attention fractured, it costs us 11 to 24 minutes. 40% of the time, we don't even get back to the original thing we were working on. So it's a bit like, I often think about it as we're going down the motorway, we're flying down the motorway. Every micro decision is like a breaking point, and then we have to build up speed again, and then we lose momentum, and then we build up speed, or we're off on a tangent down this road or this. It would take us forever to get to that end destination if we get there. But the other thing that happens, it impacts the brakes, the fuels, and the tires. And that's why we feel that cognitive overload. That's why we feel really exhausted at times, where even if we do get a free hour, it's very difficult to actually focus. Focus fatigue is because we're paying a tax over and over again that impacts us, our time, and our nervous system in a massive way. For example, most of us, because of those micro decisions, most people are in fight or flight mode all the time. I see it with the business owners that comes to me. Their nervous system is wired to be reactive.
Yeah.
So even if there isn't something to react to, we're almost trying to find something to react on. That's why we check the phone, or we're on LinkedIn, or we're looking at an email, or we're constantly reacting. And what happens is those micro decisions are costing us that tax over and over and over again. Like what good systems do, essentially, we talk about systems and stuff like that. Good systems are designed to massively reduce the amount of micro decisions. So it creates efficiency, but it also creates predictable outcomes. Because again, when you're making micro decisions, progress is random. Okay, you're here, you're on an email, your call. If you were to zoom out, you'd see a lot of business owners, their days are, progress is really random. When you've systemized, what happens is everything you're doing, broadly speaking, is in alignment with the outcomes that you want into the week, month, or the end of the year. And that's the invisible tax that we pay over and over again, and it's something that most people are paying maybe without even realizing it.
Is there or maybe you do this or have done it in the past? Is there typically like an audit that people can do to, because I'm a big believer that in order to identify a problem, you've got to know where there's a problem, right? And I think that by doing some sort of quick audit of some sort that helps you to identify what those micro decisions is that something that you typically do, or with clients, or how does one create an audit about where they're at?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that's has to be the starting point, a diagnostic, and that's what we'd essentially do with people that come to me who perform a founder diagnostic assessment, and that allows us to actually dive deeper to figure out, well, what is actually going on here. What happens a lot of people is they're treating the symptom rather than the root cause. Stuff we talked about offline, procrastination, things like that. It's not actually you procrastinating and not doing. There's something much deeper happening there. For example, when people procrastinate, it's often as a result of all those micro decisions stacking up, and they procrastinate because of literally all those micro decisions leading to just overwhelm. And it's almost like you've so much to do, you don't know where to start, and then you don't want to start. So what we have to do is we take a holistic look through that founder diagnostic to actually dive deep to figure out actually what is happening. Okay, what's happening right now in terms of those challenges, in terms of their time, in terms of the tools they're currently using, in terms of the other symptoms. And then from that, we understand we have a baseline. The next step is, okay, let's park that for now, because sometimes we can get bogged down in what's wrong as well, and we never figure out what's right. The next step is, well, how do you want things to run, look, feel? What's your vision? What are your goals? What do you want to be different? How much do you want to earn? How many hours do you want to work? What I do is I reverse engineer back then from that point to figure out the solution. So if we know where you are, and then we know where you want to be, then the third and final step is we need a bridge. We need a vehicle to get there. So sometimes people do all that, And it still doesn't, it's all that is right now is information. So the next phase is actually building out a process or a system or a vehicle to help them create those outcomes. And systems don't have to be anything complicated either, by the way. Like, some systems I use myself personally, like, say, for example, I try to avoid sweets and sugar and stuff like that Monday to Friday. If I didn't have a system for that, I'd be constantly making micro decisions. Will I have it now? Will I have it later? Will I have 2 biscuits? Will I have 10? Will I just leave it to tomorrow? And eventually I'm going to cave in. Decision fatigue will get me. But instead, my system is, I don't have that house I don't have that stuff in the house Monday to Friday. And therefore I don't have all these micro decisions to make because it's just not there within reach. And my only decision is, will I buy it when I go to the shop the weekend or not? So you can see how that system has reduced many, many, many micro decisions, hundreds probably in my week, down to maybe 1 or 2 key decisions. And that's how you can create the outcome you want, essentially. And that's something we do for people that come to me. And it's also something that we're offering your listeners as well, in terms of, we have a couple of free founder time diagnostics that we're offering out to your listeners so they can essentially get to the root cause of what's happening for them as well.
Cool. Some good stuff. And for you guys that are listening in, by the way, what we'll do is we'll put all these links below in the show description notes that you can kind of tap into that. So one thing that, again, off the back of our conversation from last time, you made a bold statement and said, is that you increase productivity by 200-300% sometimes, get 12 hours back a week, right? And, me being very skeptical, because I am, and so some of our listeners, I'd like to get a better understanding how that actually happens, because that's a lot of time. 12 hours is, especially if you're doing stuff. I'd love to kind of dive into there, if that's okay.
Yeah. And that's, I'd say it's something that, people, and even I get comments all the time on social media and stuff like that, 5x, how can anybody get 5x more out of themselves? Well, look, it's not as complicated as people think. People, I suppose, we don't realize how much more is in us. For example, one thing we do with all our clients is we build out what I call focus blocks. So at certain times of the day, based on a biological rhythm, what we can see is we can map their energy levels across the week, and we can see what zones within their day work best for them in terms of focus, in terms of time. And what we do is we build in focus blocks, and these are like 90-minute dedicated blocks. And within these dedicated 90-minute blocks, what we're doing is we're generating flow state. So again, based on them and what we've found in the diagnostic that we've done, we build in certain flow triggers into those 90-minute blocks to trigger so essentially we're engineering flow state. I used to think that flow state was something that just happened now and then and was great when it did, but most of the time it didn't. We can actually engineer that. So what we do is that we utilize our 5x focus formula to do just that. And research proves, like, there's so much research out there. For example, the Harvard Business Review done research with like top executives, thousands of top executives, and they found that they were up to 500% more productive when in flow state. So what we do within these 90-minute focus blocks, we often see clients get more done in that 90 minutes than they used to do in their entire day. For example, I was one of my clients there, say last week, and we were just talking like we are now, and he actually, before 9 o'clock now, he gets more done. He is more done than he used to get done in an entire day. Most people think that's off the wall, but that's just one example. Other examples is, if you can stop paying that invisible tax, how much time could you get back? For example, one of the things I often look for straight away is how could we reduce the noise in your day? The noise that can lead to you making those micro decisions, the emails, the calls, the WhatsApps, the interruptions. If we can, I always say it's not that stuff doesn't happen, it's when it happens. If we can filter that and funnel it to windows in your day and create a cleaner runway within your day where you don't have that drip of an email and a call and a text and something else, an interruption, what happens is we can take out so many of those friction points. And if we're in deep work, any interruption, distraction, anything like that can cost 11 to 24 minutes. Like, you take out 3 of those, there's an hour back. And it's much more than that per person per day typically. So you can start to see how you can reclaim so much more of that time. Often quick wins, there's so many quick wins you can get from that stuff straight away. And it's getting you, it's what it also does is it calms the nervous system, and it starts getting you out of that flight or flight mode that you're in, where you're constantly reacting to everything and nothing. You're looking for the thing to react to. So the knock-on benefit is when that happens, the nervous system is calmer, your brain is clearer, you have more focus, you have more energy, and all we've done is made some small changes and tweaks. That's like the tip of the iceberg. There's other levels. I always say it's like peeling the layer off the onion. We peel those outside layers and we get to the really meaty stuff. That's not even when we bring in the power of AI or anything else into the process. So you can start to see now how quickly and easily you can start to get those hours back. Like we have people get anything up to 47 more hours back, which again, it sounds unbelievable, but it happens. And it really is. Sometimes even the small tweaks can make a big difference.
Let's talk a little bit about that inflow state. Are you talking about something which is kind of subconsciously, from a subconscious perspective? Again, because I've heard of that term, inflow state. Could you just give us a little bit more context to our listeners around what inflow state is? What does inflow state look like, and what does inflow state not look like?
Yeah.
And what are kind of the benefits around that?
So flow state is where literally the brain releases 5 neurochemicals into the system. And there's certain things we have to do for each of us individually in order to trigger those neurochemicals. But when we do, what happens is that it's almost like that feeling where time disappears, where we're immersed in the moment, where we're really enjoying what we do, where there's no friction, we're just moving through the process. It feels really good. Okay. That's flow state, that powerful feeling that we probably all had at some points in our life, but not really consistently. That is flow state. And when we're in flow, it's like what we're doing is we're condensing time, we're collapsing time. Okay. It's like there's zero friction to getting from A to B. That friction we feel of thinking about how to do something, or just the brain is, crying out for us to switch to something else, that all disappears. What doesn't look like flow state is, well, it's thinking about other stuff. It's switching tasks. It's not deciding what to do. That friction of sitting down and actually wondering what to do, or how are we going to get stuck into this task. Anywhere there's friction, that's almost like the opposite of that flow state.
Beautiful. Love that. So what you're saying then, in order to get into flow state, you'll then have focus blocks that helps to instigate these inflow states. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. Yeah. So what we do is we design flow triggers. You won't, the focus block alone won't do it. What it does, focus block is like where we're putting a big rock into your day.
Got it.
Okay. So this actually does happen. So we're carving out time where we're going to park the world for now, and we're just going to carve out that time for us. And then what we use is we utilize our 5X focus formula to design that focus block around you and how you operate. There's many different flow triggers that you can utilize, but typically we're selecting maybe 4 flow triggers that people utilize to help them generate that flow state for their performance and their own individual makeup.
Describe to me what a flow trigger is.
So it's anything that can help us get into that flow state. So different flow triggers. For example, one of the biggest friction points to generating flow state, what I mentioned earlier, is deciding what to do.
Yeah,
it's that friction. We have to sit down and decide, actually, there's 100 things we need to do. What is it I'm going to do here? Because that friction is where we'll lose traction. It's where we'll maybe switch to something else that's less cumbersome. So that's one thing. It's knowing exactly what you're going to do for each of these focus blocks. The day before you even get up in the morning, you know exactly what that first thing is you're going to get. Some other flow triggers that people utilize as well. One of the obvious ones is filtering the noise. What we do is we have a focus bubble that we set up for people. So that brings them through a certain process where they set up their environment for success. A lot of people are reacting to the world. What we're going to do is we build a bubble around them for just that 90 minutes, so that essentially they're in control of that 90 minutes and they're not. Because even when sometimes we're not getting the notification or the call, people are almost waiting for that next call. They're waiting for that because we've interrupted 5 times already this morning. We're just waiting for that 6th time. So what you need to do is you need to design your environment around getting the most out of you. Okay, we need to save ourselves from ourselves and other people just for that 90 minutes. So, because again, if we're triggered, if we're reacting, if there's notifications, that's all fracturing our attention. That's all keeping us out of that state that we want to get in.
So, just for clarity, then, flow triggers are a bit like friction points, is what you're saying. Is that correct? Is identifying friction points?
Yeah, it is. That is absolutely a big part of it. Yeah,
and
what are things that can prevent us from generating that flow state?
And I suppose each person is different, right? Each person will have a different flow state. Like, what causes that friction? Because I know that the way that we operate from a mindset perspective and what we do on a day-to-day basis is going to depend on who we are as people. Like, for example, you mentioned around distractions. I know a really good friend of mine, actually, who I used to mentor, and she used to I used to call her shiny penny syndrome lady. Right. So she used to go from one project to the next without completing any projects, but she'd have 10 different projects going on the same thing, spinning all these different plates. And I've just, Anyway, so that what you just described is like a flow state, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You'd have your work cut out with her, I can assure you. But that's funny. Anyway, so that's good. Very good. I typically speak to a lot of founders on a weekly basis, Barry, right? And they say to me, but Adam, I don't have a productivity problem. I have a revenue problem. More money solves the time issue. Are they wrong?
Yes, I believe so. In most cases, now people may come to me like there's always outliers and exceptions and stuff like that. But what I'd often see is it's not revenue. It's how you're utilizing your time right now. Okay, most people are caught up, in the weeds of the business, or caught up in the business, and they're just not getting that time on the business to generate the revenue.
Yep.
Like I had a guy there, he's working with me at the moment, and like his mind blew when I sat down and actually calculated his hourly rate. He couldn't believe it. I just got his revenue, his turnover for the year, divided that by 2,000 as in 40 hours a week, and his hourly rate in terms of what his time was worth for the business was €2,500 an hour. His head nearly popped off when I told him that, because when we looked at an analysis we'd done of where he spent his time and energy, it was all on €10, €20, €30 an hour tasks. He was getting nowhere near that.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to put in some of those things that we talked about and others in order to free up his time for that more important stuff. And I get it all the time, but Barry, everything needs to be done. I can't just focus on the big stuff. What about all this other stuff? And like, for example, there was an engineer, a guy that has an engineering firm that came to me there a while back, and he was like, same thing, Barry, I can't not do all these things to get the big thing done. I was like, well, what about that engineer that you were going to hire 3 months ago? And I said, where is he now? He said, I don't know, I just getting time. I rang him lately, I couldn't get a hold of him. He might be working somewhere else, I'm not sure. And how much of his workload or your workload was he going to take off you? About 50%, because he was going to do all the drawings and all the rest. And so that one big thing on the business task that you didn't do, now you're paying a 50% tax every day on your time from now, tomorrow, and the next day, and forever more until you actually make that change. So in terms of things, that we have to start looking at things differently. If we keep doing the same things, guess what? We'll have a revenue problem in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. What we need to do is need to get smarter about how we're doing things, create those efficiencies, but also start getting that time on the business to drive the revenue. Because when we do, we're starting to put our time into what our real hourly value is worth. I have another girl I'm working with at the moment. She was 90% of her job was just admin stuff, again, lower value type stuff. And she was afraid to hire. Okay, so we've done 2 things. Number one, we just got her a virtual assistant and a small fraction of what our hourly rate is worth. And she actually had no problem actually delegating stuff then when she could say, actually, here's my hourly rate, here's what I'm paying someone, and here's the tax that I'm saving now on a daily basis. So all we did was build playbooks for that virtual assistant, so that virtual assistant does it the way they want it to be done. So that's how we save that time. That's how we prevent that tax. And that's how you can then generate the revenue. Her problem was she couldn't get in front of clients. She needed at least 2 days a week in front of clients, and she couldn't reverse it because she had all this admin stuff. So it's just reversing things, putting your time and energy into the right places. And again, just having some systems underneath you to help you do that.
I guess what I picked up from this conversation is stop doing 10 to 20 euro tasks, ladies and gents, including things like cleaning your house, ironing, and all that nonsense. Simple things like that, right? That makes our life easier, so much easier. We're going to go into coaching mode very shortly, which I'm always excited about, by the way, Barry, because I know that we've been talking a little bit about my situation. I've got one final question before we do that. And I think this kind of really goes out to some of the listeners that are putting in the reps, right? They might be a parent, for example, juggling, running a family like I do. They might be doing 55, 60 hours a week. They're tired, they're worn down, they're overwhelmed. And part of them are thinking, great, Barry, this sounds like an amazing concept that you're talking about. And it all makes complete sense. But my situation is different. You don't know me, Barry. What do you say to that person? What's the one thing, probably not a mindset shift that needs to happen, like maybe an action point or an exercise that they can do before the week's out and gives them a quick win?
Yeah, I think one of the first things is just to filter that noise. Okay, there's such a cost to that noise dropping into our life. So it's putting controls and boundaries around your time, and it's filtering that noise down for you in terms of, okay, emails, calls, texts. What I mean by that is we need to have carve out times for ourselves where we have dedicated time, like we talked about with those focus blocks. Okay, one of the first things we do with our clients is we filter that noise and we put in a focus block first thing. So most people, it's the opposite. The first thing is to check the phone, any emails pop in, any WhatsApps. So I'd say reverse that, get your 90-minute focus block straight in there, put in I put a bubble around it where you have to set up your environment to make sure you're not getting the call, the text, the email. Because if you can knock out that big thing early and you filter that noise, I'm telling you can create number one, you've got the big 1, 2, 3 things done early in the day, you've ate the frog. But number two, you have created massive momentum for the rest of your day. And that momentum can take you through a lot of other stuff in your day. So by filtering that noise and getting that stuff done early and first, that gets you off the races. It really does. Yeah.
I actually had I want to share a quick epiphany with you, because some of you guys know I'm a 3 times best-selling author. And so I remember my very first book, I did exactly what you described. I had the idea of a book for many years. I don't know if any of our listeners kind of resonate with this, but when there's never enough date and hours in the day. But what I typically did is what worked for me particularly well was I would do an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half in the evening, right? So I would typically get about 3 hours of complete and utter in the zone. So I just get my book done. And then within 6 weeks, I got my first manuscript all done and dusted based on that same concept. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because a guy I'm working with at the moment is a broadcaster here in Ireland. He's doing the exact same thing. But it's the consistency of doing that early every day.
Yeah.
That word count is getting hit on a daily basis, and it stacks up massively. So yeah, that is exactly it.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it's amazing actually how it adds up.
It's
massively.
True. I mean, I'd typically have to get up a bit earlier than I would have liked to, of course, but then I kind of think to myself, well, how else am I going to get it done, Adam? So, and it's only for a temporary short period of time anyway. So I love that. Very good. So let's jump into my favorite part, ladies and gents, which is the coaching part. So I want you, before Barry jumps in with me on this coaching part, what I would like to do is, I always say this to you guys, make sure you got your notebook and pen handy. And I really can't want you to think as if Barry is sitting with you right now. Okay. So for context, Barry knows a little bit about me. Well, he does anyway. But typically I want you to think about what Barry's going to be kind of exploring with me. How does it apply to you? Okay? That's number one. But number two, what can you do with the information and knowledge that you're getting given today into your own life? How can you be more productive? How can you reduce this invisible tax of what you want to call it? How can you do better? Yeah. So Barry, where should we start with this?
Let's maybe dive into what's happening right now. What do you feel, maybe, Adam, is the biggest challenge right now within your days, would you say?
Well, I mean, right now it's the school break and having very limited time. That's my challenge. But if it was a typical
Yeah.
working week, what's my main challenge? Well, I think I probably feel like most of our listeners here, there's never enough time in the day. We have this amazing podcast production, for example, my consultancy firm to manage, and typically there's a lot of what you would say, a lot of micro decisions that's making and things like that. And but I'm a doer, right? I do stuff, right? I like to typically on a Sunday evening, I'd like to write down 3 to 5 things that I'd like to achieve in the week. And I am relentless. I like to make sure that I can get them done by Monday or Tuesday at the very latest. And then I can kind of relax a little bit more. And I always find that actually a typical Friday, apart from this Friday, my typical Fridays are a lot more relaxed than they were on the Monday or the Tuesday. Yeah. So I hope that makes sense.
Tell me then about, okay, we'll go a level deeper in terms of what's behind that. How do you manage that workflow at the moment? Do you use task lists or planners or diaries, or do you time block, or how do you kind of manage that workflow across the week, say?
So, good question. I have my black diary, of course, because that's kind of typically the 3 to 5 things that I like to write down. In terms of my activity, how does that work with? So we do have certain workflows in place. We could have more in, of course. And I think that's probably where it's probably costing us a lot more, because we don't have, as you rightly pointed out earlier, the playbooks. Not all of the playbooks that. And one thing that I actually thought about this the other day, which is, I'm doing these things on a regular basis. Why am I not documenting what I'm doing? And then I could kind of pass it on to somebody else, right? Type of thing. Why am I not doing that?
Yeah.
It was this kind of this realization. So, so that's kind of typically what I've been thinking about.
So that's an excellent point in itself, in terms of what I get my clients to use. I built a tool called the Founder Freedom Multiplier. And what that does is it will convert how you're doing a particular task into a playbook. But one of the quickest ways people can do this right now is you probably came across Loom. Use the likes of Loom or another screen record software. You're already doing the task. Why not record how you're doing it using Loom? And then you can use AI to build that into a really powerful playbook for you. So this is how you can actually quickly and easily hand over stuff, maybe to a member of your team or to a virtual assistant online, at a fraction of your hourly rate. And now you're starting to free up some time for you. But guess what? They do it the way you want it to do done, because they have the Loom, they can see it, how you do it. So they're operating the way you want, and they have the playbook process. So you can feel better about handing this stuff over. And if a member of your team moves around or leaves or someone comes in, again, they're working off playbooks rather than you pull back down into the weeds. The other thing I'd say is, like, structure. Structure in the week is a massive thing, because if we don't have structure, it's like we're out in an ocean of time in a dinghy, and the tide is bringing us this way and we're bobbing that way, and we're really just going with the flow. And yes, we have those 3-5 things we want to really achieve, but outside of that, we can drift. Okay, we can be reactive. Again, we're paying a tax there that we don't need to pay when we're already busy. So what I would be doing is I'll be looking at all those individual things that you would be doing over a period of time. And I would look at batching those similar type tasks into what I call power blocks. And this is where we can take out two of those invisible taxes. The setup cost of sitting down and getting started and stuck into something new, and the task switching cost. So typical ones, emails, calls, it could be paperwork, it could be admin type stuff, it could be social media, marketing and stuff. Instead of it just being random, built in around, as they pop up or as they arrive or when we get a chance, they're blocked and structured into your week. I'll give you an example. An accountant I was working with, he was like, yeah, Barry, but all my tasks are different. But I said, hold on, James, what about this one here? You have to sign off accounts. But look, they come to me at random times. I can't tell when I'm going to. I said, James, what was the worst thing that would happen if you let those build up over a course of a day or 2 days, and then you hit them at one block of time once or twice a week? He said, I suppose I could do that. It was funny, in the case study video after, he said he converted a day and a half of work down to about 3 hours just by doing that one thing. Now you can start to see how much time you get back. Now you can start to see how much it costs you. So the things like that, Adam, that you're doing, and probably many other of your listeners, I know I used to do it, that you can actually take and batch together into power blocks and structure them into your calendar. Okay. And what you can also do with that structure is align it with your goals and the outcomes that you want. I don't know, I read it somewhere before, but someone said anyways, in the book, like, if you showed me your calendar, I'll tell you where you're going to be in a year. And it's getting that structure, because what you're doing is you're funneling time and energy into the right places in order for you to put the right amount of time into the areas that's going to move you and your business to where it's going to be. The other thing you're doing is you're taking out those taxes that we talked about, that invisible tax, and you're way more efficient. Okay. Plus, it frees up time and space for maybe other stuff that you just haven't got to right now. Because again, we're creating a cleaner runway for your other work, because we're creating spaces in between the emails and the calls and the other stuff for stuff that maybe we're just not getting time for at the moment. That's essentially what I'd be suggesting with as a starting point.
So what you're saying is basically, I'm going to use a typical example here. Actually, one thing that we're looking at is our sales process right now. Yeah, so our how we onboard people, things like that. Yeah, and what we've been doing is we've been using the transcriptions from our conversations, and then we've basically been kind of taking, like, I don't know, 10 transcriptions. Then I'll get it to kind of like typically put it into some sort of workflow campaign, look for the things that we need to make improvements to. And so it's kind of like, we talked about blind spots earlier, right? You don't know what your blind spots are until you know what your blind spots are, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we've been typically doing. So the whole idea, the whole premise is, Barry, is that we will have some sort of like operational sales blueprint that says, this is how we do business, like, this is how we onboard people, this is how we do this. And so then it's kind of like an idiot's guide, right? But I think what I picked up from what you had said is matching it against your goals, and that I think is a really good one. So I'll definitely add that to the mix as things.
You have a predictable process, you're going to get predictable outcomes. And again, what we talked about earlier, you're taking the randomness out of it. And even not every day is going to be perfect, not every week is going to be perfect. But overall, if you have those processing systems, progress isn't random anymore. It's all heading in alignment, you and the team. It's all going in that general overall direction, that North Star that you're after.
Something simple, using a simple system like Loom. It didn't really occur to me because I'm so hooked on transcriptions, but I guess it's the same thing. It's just audio and video and stuff.
But another thing, actually, I was talking to a client of mine earlier. He's just started working with me, and he was telling me about all the meetings. He said, look, I only need to be there for small parts of these meetings. How am I going to get out of them? I said, look, one thing you can do is async meetings, and Loom is a great way to do async meetings where you're not getting on a call with them, but because you get on a call with someone for 5-10 minutes. It's in the lap of the gods when you're going to get off that call. 5-minute question can turn into a half an hour call easy. So I was saying, use Loom, okay, get them to document, okay, what the issue is, what they need from you. Send that Loom video over, and you can do this. Now it's like a 5-minute answer to their Loom video rather than me hopping on them. You keep getting those 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes back. That is weeks and weeks of working time every year.
Yeah.
Months maybe.
It's a good one, actually, and it's definitely something that we could do more for the team on for that one. So that's I like that. It's a good one. Very good. For you guys that are listening, by the way, I hope that this has been a fascinating call. We don't do too much stuff on productivity, in all honesty, but I think it's a really gentle reminder that actually it's the simple things, it's the easy things that can be done to, and as Barry had highlighted in the conversation, is being able to become aware of those invisible taxes that we need to be aware of, that we need to eliminate. So this has been a really good conversation. So Barry, I just want to say thanks so much. It's been a great conversation, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. And I hope your listeners got at least a couple of things, because like if you look at it like this, even if you just say 15 minutes a day, okay, that 15 minutes a day, it's an hour a week, it's 52 hours a year, it's one working week at a time a year you've saved just by getting a small bit more efficient.
Yep.
And if someone came along and said, here's one working week of time for you, what could you achieve in the business?
Yep, absolutely. Love that. And just before we go as well, what we'll do is we'll make sure that we'll put all the links to Barry below, and make sure you check out the assessment diagnostics tool that he was talking about as well. Just click on the link and fill in your details and things like that. And I just think it's a great tool to be able to go away with. Thanks so much to you, Barry. And it's been a great conversation, and hopefully for you guys, you've enjoyed today's conversation. Thanks very much from me and Barry, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Take care. Cheers now. Bye-bye.